who will make some opening remarks, following which we will take your questions. Commissioner, over to you.
Thank you very much. The Commission today has adopted a recommendation where we recommend the two main actions that should be taken by Schengen member states and Schengen associated countries. First is on internal borders. We recommend and call on these member states and Schengen associated countries to lift all internal border restrictions that have been in place according to the COVID-19 situation. We do that because we know now we are in a good situation where the pandemic situation is increasing rapidly in all member states and converging. It's been better and better. We have also the report from ECDC telling us that border restrictions inside the European Union and in the Schengen area is not an effective way to deal with the pandemic right now. And we are also in a good situation where in all member states the containment measures like social distancing is in place. So that's why we call on all these countries to lift all the internal border controls on Monday. I must say that most of them are already on their way. All countries have taken decisions or are announced that they are going to lift, but still there are some borders that have not been announced yet to be lifted, and the controls have not been announced to be lifted, so we call on them to do that. Why do we do that? We do that because now it's also time to start a discussion on how to lift the external borders. We have now a recommendation where there should be travel restrictions for non-essential travel on the external borders, and that will end on Monday. We had a discussion in the Council of Home Affairs, and there was very strong support that we should make a short prolonging of these restrictions on non-essential travelling on external countries. That's why we now recommend that we should prolong the temporary restrictions on non-essential travel into the EU until the 13th of June, another 2 weeks. And for sure, it's not yet possible to have a general lifting of the travel restrictions at all external borders to the European Union, but it's coming to a situation where we have to start gradually to do that from the 1st of July. This will apply to all third countries which are in a similar or better situation as compared to the EU as regards their health situation. And these measures are about travel into the EU only. But of course, the most important thing is to protect the protection of public health in the over. This is the most important priority for the EU and its member states. So we are taking these measures so that health is protected at the same time as Europeans can see loved ones across borders and people can go back to work across borders in more and more countries. This has to be done in a coordinated manner, and this is also what member states strongly are asking for. And I should guess this is going to be quite difficult road ahead to get this coordinated approach. And that's why we also today have presented some criteria that we should use when setting up a list of countries where we should gradually open the external borders. These criteria should be, of course, first, epidemiological situation in a third country. And I know that sometimes it's difficult to have the proper statistics from every country, but this still is the most important thing. Second is the containment measures while travelling. This must also be in place to be able to open up for a third country. And third is the reciprocity, so that if we open up from travelling into the EU, we expect that this country should open up for the travelling from our countries to that country. And that has to be applied for all the EU member states and Schengen associated countries. We propose that together with member states that the member states should set up a list of countries where it should be open for them, residents in their countries, to travel into the European Union. This list, of course, hopefully can be longer and longer and longer and have more and more countries on it, but that has to be taken gradually. To set up this list, we will help member states to find a common way forward, and we will do that in the IPCR, the crisis organization in the Council. And we also will start with a discussion with the member states on a technical level today to set up this first list. The Commission itself, we propose that the Western Balkan states should be on the list already on the 1st of July. It's, of course, a decision of a member state how they will manage their borders, but we in the Commission are happy to facilitate this and help member states to have this coordinated approach. But may I also underline, this is not only about borders, it's also about individuals, how we all apply to the containment measures, to the social distancing, to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones and to protect others. This is still, we are still in a pandemic and we are still have to continue following these restrictions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Commissioner. We will now take a few questions. You will see journalists on this screen and they will see you through that camera on your left. So let's maybe start from, I believe, the north of Europe with Lotte. You have the floor. Please press speak. I think we're almost there. Press speak.
Speak? Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I would ask you about this internal border restrictions, because not all member states, not all countries are as fast as you might wish regarding opening EU's internal borders. In Denmark, the government has said that they do not plan to open up for all Schengen countries and UK before the 31st of August. And now you have said that you want them to open up on Monday. So can you be more precise? What is your message to the Danish government and to other governments that have planned to have closed borders for a much longer time? Thank you.
My message is that you should open up as soon as possible, and the Commission recommends to do it already on Monday. I understand that members have been following the recommendations, the previous recommendations that said that you should take into account the epidemiological situation in this country. But now we have reached a situation where this situation is really improving in all member states. The situation is converging, and the ECDC has made a report that closing internal border, having internal border restrictions is not an effective measure. So my recommendation for these countries is to open up as soon as possible.
Very good, thank you. Can I now give the floor to Susanna, please? You have the floor. And please remember to press speak.
Okay.
Got it.
Do you listen to me now? Okay. So my question is pretty much the same, because we just received from the Portuguese government the information that Portugal and Spain will keep the borders closed, or the border controls until 30 of June. So, and this decision was just announced. So I don't understand. Is there a lack of coordination here between member states and the European Commission? Because the Portuguese government is also mentioning your recommendations. And so actually, what do you expect when a government is just saying 30 of June, the Commission is saying 15 of June, just so Monday. Is here a lack of coordination? Thank you.
No, I don't think so. I think that what I have been very clear on the whole time is that member states should open up as soon as possible. And at the council we had last week, I said that I think that should be done at the latest on this last day of June. But today the Commission has made a decision to recommend member states to open up as soon as on Monday. And we do that according to the situation where we have seen a very rapid change in the decisions in a lot of member states that first had set a date in the future, but then have changed their mind and are converging more or less towards the 15th of June.
Very good, thank you. I would now pass the floor to Krzysztof from the Polish Press Agency.
Thank you, Commissioner. The question about external borders, you mentioned the Western Balkans countries for which the borders will be open should be open as of 1st July. I would like to ask about the US, one of the key countries for the European Union. Would you advise to open the borders for the travelers from US? And the second question on internal borders, the question from the previous colleagues indicate that average citizen might have a problem finding out which border is open and which is not. I have to admit that I had a problem myself trying to figure out which border would be opened as of 15 and which not. How Commission is going to facilitate citizens then figure out what's the situation right now? Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. First, let me say that our recommendation is to open up on the 15th of June, but the most important thing is that we open up totally inside the European Union Schengen area before we open up in the external. And our proposal is to start opening up the external at the 1st of July. So that means that there is also a scope for member states to have this decision. When it comes to recommendations, we will be happy from the Commission to facilitate this coordination among member states, and we are reaching out to them for the first consultation today to find a common list. The only recommendation that the Commission has made so far is that we recommend that the Western Balkans should be on the list from the 1st of July. And then we will take part, of course, in a discussion together with the Member States. I think you're also raising a very important issue. Where can we find the latest information on what's the situation at borders, which one are open and under which circumstances? And this is really a huge need for that, especially since decisions are now taken very, very quickly, and that could change from one day to another. That's why the Commission is planning to set up a special website where you should easily be able to find this information just by clicking on a country and to learn what is the situation and the decisions on that border.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's maybe go to the south of Europe now very quickly with Athanasios. You have the floor if you press speak.
Thank you very much, Albert. Commissioner, I was wondering if the decision is actually enforceable in the case of the country lists that have to be common after the 1st of July concerning the external borders. What happens if one country chooses to open its borders externally with some third countries, some third states, and not some others, and member states end up with various lists that do not totally overlap? How enforceable is your recommendation, first of all? Second, do you have any information right now for any member state that might already have lifted non-necessary travel with one pretext or the other with third countries? Thanks.
On your second question, we have the situation where Ireland has not introduced the external border restrictions. So this is the member state that have not followed our recommendation so far. On your first question, I don't expect that to happen. because when we have several talks with the member states, the last was in the council on last Friday, there's really a huge need, and they're asking for a coordinated approach. And of course, everybody understands that if one member state on Schengen, one Schengen country opens up in a way that is not coordinated with others, there is a huge risk of new internal border restrictions. So as a member state of the Schengen area, you have the responsibility not only for your own borders, but also for the whole external Schengen borders. And this is really important, and all member states know that, and they realize that. So I don't think that will happen.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing now that Susanna had a follow-up to her question, so you have the floor, please. Yes, you need to press the
Okay, so I would like to just to clarify this. When you're talking about Monday, so actually what you are doing right now is to ask governments like the Portuguese to reconsider and to open, for instance, with Spain, or to lift the restrictions as soon as possible, meaning what you are asking is for Portugal and Spain not to wait until the 30th of June, but to do it before, so by Monday.
Yeah. Let me say like this. I understand that when we on a Thursday recommend that you should open on Monday, it's quite a short time for a government that has not already taken that decision. I understand that. But we have also seen that member states are very much converging towards the 15th of June. That's why that's our recommendation. But the most important date is that all the internal borders should be open before we start opening the external ones. So that might be a case where some member states need to use another week or two in June. But the most important thing is that all internal borders are open before we start opening the external ones at the 1st of July.
Thank you. And let's maybe stay on the Iberian Peninsula with Griselda. Griselda, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Understand why, Commissioner, you decide today this recommendation. Why exactly that is important today, and we don't said nothing about that in the last council.
I don't really understand why we're taking this decision today. It's because the recommendation to have travel restriction for non-essential travelling into the EU from the third countries will expire on Monday, and we think it's too early. That's why we now have the recommendation to prolong until the end of June. And then from the 1st of July, step by step, start to open to some third countries.
Thank you. Let's maybe go to some written press now. Thomas Gutschka from the FATS. Press speak.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner. I have a question regarding the conditions that you've set in the communication. Specifically, the third criteria that you're mentioning, the reciprocity criteria, does that mean that could this criteria replace the other two? So if we assume a country like Brazil, for instance, offers free travel to EU citizens, could that be sufficient for EU to open up to travelers from Brazil? Or is it just an additional criteria to the other two? And very specifically, when you apply your criteria to the US and China, which of the two countries would be higher on the list or would be eligible for entry first? Thanks.
On your first question, no, it's an additional one. The most important, in our view from the Commission, is the epidemiological situation. When we first introduced this restriction on non-essential travelling to external outside the EU, we were the hub of the pandemic. Now, luckily, we are in a much, much better situation in the European Union, but others are in a worse situation. So the epidemiological criteria is the most important from the Commission side, that we should follow that. But to answer your second one, it's not the Commission who set up this list. We are happy to facilitate Member States to set up this list. This is what we recommend that they do together. And the Commission will be there as a partner to help facilitate this. So it's not the Commission that will set up the list, it's the Member State, but we will be a partner and help to facilitate that.
Thank you. I would suggest we now go to Paula. Paula, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. Commissioner, I wanted to ask you what happens in the event that a country, a EU country, has already opened with third countries which may not be on the list. I'm thinking, for instance, of Cyprus, which has adopted kind of a phase one and phase two approach, and it will open or has already opened to travelers from Israel. What happens if Israel is not on the list decided by the Council? Should Cyprus close again the borders with Israel? I'm making this example, but it could be any other country with any other third country. And the second question is, you have said just now that you will launch this website where Europeans and non-Europeans can go and check which borders are open, which not. Do you know when this will be available? Thanks.
On the last question, I hope soon, but I can't give you a date, unfortunately. On the first question, it's a little bit the same as I answered before, and I'm not expecting this to happen, actually, because what I hear from Member States is a strong will to coordinate this. And we have had a situation where the restrictions on non-essential travelling into the EU from third country will expire on Monday. And that's, of course, a situation where Member States have made different plans. Now we make a new recommendation after the discussion we had in Council last Friday to prolong it 2 weeks. And my impression is that this will be accepted by all Member States.
Great. Thank you very much. I suggest we take a question from, I believe, Finland. Mr. or Ms. Hassinen? Here, you have the floor. But you need to press speak.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I'm Miss Heta Hassinen from the Finnish News Agency. My question is about the external borders. Why Commission is proposing to open them on 1st of July? If I understood correctly, last Friday in the Council meeting, Finland, among other member states, said that 1st of July is way too soon, and the Finnish government has said today, actually like 1 hour ago, that they're going to prolong the external border restriction until the mid-July. So how Commission is going to coordinate this? I would like to insist on that. And why are you now proposing the 1st of July? Thank you.
We have listened to Member States, and it was very clear there was few or one Member State that would like to open earlier, already on the 15th of June. There was a few Member States that would like to have a prolonging of the external border restriction longer than the 1st of July, but the big majority of Member States was on the line that we should prolong it only for 2 weeks, and that was the proper time. And this is, of course, always the situation when we have to have a common approach, and everybody agrees that this needs to be coordinated. And then, of course, Member States could have a little bit different approaches. And then it's the role for the Commission to listen to Member States and from that find where the best compromise will be that will be accepted and be more or less in the middle or with a big support from Member States. And I'm pretty sure and I feel comfortable with that this situation that there's a huge support from a lot of Member States that we should have prolonged to the last day of June and then open up from the 1st of July. But we should not open up all borders from the 1st of July, so this should be gradually. And we have to make it in a way, of course, that we are ready also to take step backwards if necessary. So this has to be step by step. So I think this list will grow from maybe not from day to day, but at least maybe from week to week, because the epidemiological situation is improving in a lot of member states, but we have to monitor that carefully.
Very good. I suggest we take a few questions maybe from outside of the EU, starting with Ana Pinto. Press speak.
Hi. Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Regarding a third country that is not in the list of the European Union, who is going to be banned? Are there the national citizens, the residents, or anyone who comes from that country? I mean, if a European citizen who lives in a country that is still forbidden, will he be allowed to travel into the European Union?
Our recommendation is the same as previous. They should be based on where you live, not on your nationality. So that means if there are restrictions from a specific country, that applies for all residents in that country. There could be a person that have a nationality from that, but has been living in another country, and then the regulation for that country where the person lives will apply. We also today recommend a little bit broader opening for essential travelling for those countries that are not on the list, and that means, for example, that we open up for citizens, people that are residents in the European Union and their family members, not only to travel home, but also to travel into the area for other reasons.
Great. And maybe we can go to Thomas now. Thomas Miglierina, you have the floor. If you press speak.
Okay. Yes, thank you. You said you are launching the consultation now. When do you expect to have the final list? Obviously before the 1st of July, but how before? And also, why you made an exception for the Western Balkans? As you said, it's the only country for which you issue a recommendation. Can you expand more on this Western Balkan recommendation that you're making? Thank you very much.
For the timetable, of course, it has to be before the 1st of July, and I think it has to be some time before to be able for member states to take the right decision. But we will have the first meeting today with member states, and that will, of course, depend on the member states' willingness and ability to find a common ground for this. So it's not possible for me to say an exact date. The Western Balkans, we make this recommendation based on two things. First, the epidemiological situation in these countries are similar or better compared to the European Union. And second, we have a special and close relationships.
Perfect. And let's maybe now go to Lawrence Norman from the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, thanks a lot, Albert. Thanks, Commissioner. I have a couple of questions. First of all, how many borders right now are still shut within EU and Schengen? Secondly, what is the situation for a country that has a quarantine in place? Is that so? For example, if there's a country which is theoretically open, but you have to quarantine for 14 days. Will that be considered as an open country or not? And related to that, what is the current situation and how will this affect the UK?
First, I hope that the UK also will follow our recommendations, but it's a recommendation for Schengen and Schengen-associated countries. When it comes to this very difficult question about quarantine, it's not easy for me to really answer. This has to be taken into account when the member states discuss together with the Commission on how we should, if a country will be on the list or not. But let me just say that I think it's a huge difference if you have a general quarantine or if you have a more targeted quarantine for specific groups or specific risks. So this also has to be taken into account. And then I forgot your first question. Oh.
Can you repeat?
Sorry, I forgot your first question. How many borders? Yes.
Yeah. How many shut borders? And can you be a little bit more specific with the UK? I thought the UK was included from the beginning. It was one of the countries that travel to and from was allowed. Is that not still the case, or have I got that wrong?
No, it's possible. Their UK citizens are being treated as EU citizens. But UK is not a member of Schengen. So that means this is not a recommendation directly towards UK, but I hope they will also follow. But it's, of course, not that they are not Schengen countries. Well, there's still some border checks inside the European Union, inside the Schengen area, but most of them have been announced to be lifted on Monday. After Monday, there are still a few ones that are not being lifted, but I'm a little bit hesitating because we had a situation on Friday, and when I met with the ministers in council, then there was still a lot of member states that have not announced the lifting of their border checks. And now, only a few days later, there have been a huge change. So my experience is that member states are lifting borders quicker than I have expected.
Very good. I will now give the floor to Sander van Hoorn. Press speak. Yep. Press speak more intensively. Alternatively, we can
include an app. Thank you.
We got you. We hear you now, yeah.
Okay, now I'm able to. Okay, so on the website, again, you say it will be finished soon, but as you noticed, countries have sped up the opening of their borders, so have you sped up the development of the website? And as I tried to access the ECDC website on a mobile device, which is a horrible experience, the development of a website include a mobile app as well? Thank you.
I must admit do not have enough information to answer your last question, and I'm not personally responsible for setting up the website, so unfortunately I can't answer you more precisely than that.
I, however, can say that yes, indeed, there will be an app, from what I understand from my colleagues who are nodding vigorously in the room. So I think that's good news. Okay, can I give the floor to Victor Numelin now, please?
So now,
yes,
maybe you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Great. There's a lot of countries who still say that they won't take in people from Sweden due to the health situation from Monday. So what will happen with the Swedes from Monday? Should countries let them in now? Or what should happen otherwise with the countries if they don't do it?
Well, our recommendation is that they should let all EU citizens in and lift the internal border checks. Our recommendation is to do it from Monday, but I would also add that at least to do it before the end of the month, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to start lifting the external borders.
Very good. Let's maybe take a couple of questions from German media. Yuri Scheiko.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Very well.
Do you hear me? Great. So, Commissioner, I have two questions. The first question is, sorry, do you hear me?
Yes, apologies for that.
Do you hear me? Okay. If you will open borders with one country, but that country has borders also opened with another country, which has much worse epidemiological situation than this country. So how would you prevent people coming from that country where the epidemiological situation is much worse through that country with a better situation with which you will open the border? So like, for example, if we take Ukraine and Belarus, so Ukraine has much better situation than Belarus, but so how will you do this? And the second question, yesterday German government has prolonged warning against travel to the third countries till the end of August. How are your recommendations compatible with this travel warning? Many thanks.
First, I think it's not possible for the Commission to deal with the situation in third countries, but of course I do think that Member States will take that into account when they decide whether a country will be on the list or not. When it comes to recommendations from a government towards their citizens, it's something else than actually having restrictions or checks at the external borders.
Thank you very much. We've had lots of questions, and I see that we've got what seems like a never-ending stream of those, but unfortunately the time is pressing, so we will not be able to take more at this point. However, we remain, of course, at your disposal for any further clarifications. Thank you very much for your very active participation today, and looking forward to reading the coverage. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.